and welcome everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And here at the very top of the show, Joy has been fighting with Buzzsprout this evening, who are the people who publish these podcast episodes. We want to add some more hours, and it turned into a whole thing.
They tried to steal $6 from me, but then I refreshed about 30 minutes later, and they gave me my $6, and maybe I overreacted. But Tim was like, "You need to email them," and I'm like, "I'm going to $6 whole." What was annoying is it said I was suspended, but the $6 was Tim saw it, because you know what I mean, Tim. It said the payment was there, so you could see it, and then I refreshed it. I'm like, it's on my. Anyway, moral of the story is Buzzsprout, thank you for giving my $6. Tim will now, in fact, do what he needs to do, and everything's okay.
But there we are. See, this is behind the scenes stuff. You know, you just get these episodes every week and you hear us just talking about music and other things. There's technology going on. There's subscriptions. There's audio file editing. It's all going on.
To be fair, Tim expects nothing less. He asked me to do one thing and he thinks some weird catalyst will happen and eventually it'll all add up.
There we go. Fantastic.
That's what being friends with Joy is like.
Well, I tell you what, here at the top of the show, do you have any music news items for us?
Yes, I do. So Dolly, aka Dolly Parton, our favorite person, our love of our life, has announced that she is not going to be touring anymore. Have you seen any of this, Tim?
No, I haven't, but it doesn't surprise me. I mean, she's getting older, and I don't think she's toured for some time.
She is not, but she is doing this thing. So she is 78 years old, as the living icon she is. And so she has announced Dolly Parton's Threads, My Songs in Sympathy. Tim, say it.
Sympathy.
Yeah, what Tim just said. A live performance and featuring an artist. I don't know why that was hard for me to say, but it was. Performing all of her hits. Alongside the video and things of that nature. She's going to be sharing songs behind the scenes. You know, I'm getting it. So there's going to be a full orchestra and they're going to be playing all of her hits and she's going to be doing like a behind the scene video footage, that kind of thing. Does that make sense, Tim?
Yeah. Is this going on tour or is this at Dollywood or where's this going to happen?
So it doesn't really say for now. From what I'm getting is it's going to start in the Gatlinburg, Tennessee area, and it may expand out of that. But basically, she said she's not going to perform in person. She won't be there during the shows. But there'll be a full orchestra, and they'll include videos and songs of like Jolene and things of that nature. And she's going to be sharing stories behind it. I imagine, Tim, it's going to start very local and it's going to just expand. That's something you could easily market on. But she hasn't said anything outside of it's going to include classes like Jolene, Coat of Many Colors, I Will Always Love You, etc., etc. And it's going to include, it starts in March 20th, 2025. So basically a year from today, right? Mm-hmm. Give or a few months. The National Symphony, they're a symphony, Tim. Symphony. That's the word I'm looking for. Will be behind all this, which I love because she's so prone on like supporting her local, Tim, and I love that for her. She hasn't said anymore. She said she put it on Threads, which is Tim's most recent love of social media, and he needs to go on there, and he may need to do a little like on Dolly Parton, because who wouldn't? But basically, she said, I hope to take it far and wide, but as of now, it's starting in Tennessee.
There we are. Keeping it local. Okay. Do you have any other music news items for us?
No music news, but personal news. And Charles has told me I have to be very hush-hush about this, though I don't know that he actually listens to our podcast outside of hearing me from the next room over and probably laughing more than he should. But he has said, so we have the cutest little neighborhood that we live in, and it's very close to Radford University. And Charlie is, I don't know if you guys realize this from his music taste, but he may be a very sympathetic, emotional person. I may have hinted at that on this episode, on every episode ever. But anyway, so 2 houses down, Tim, they had a really small trampoline, and all the local kids kept going. Charlie may have worked very hard to make the money to buy them a full trampoline.
Oh,
And
that's
he sent it out
fantastic.
there with a little note and was very sweet about it and didn't say anything else. And they were very excited. And he said, I can't say much because he said, I don't want everyone to know what I've done, but it's the cutest thing, Tim. It's the cutest thing.
Well, go Charlie! Look at that, giving back to the neighborhood, helping the children. I mean, he's being a good citizen. You're being good neighbors.
He's following Dolly's example. Dolly is the great example of how you can give locally and internationally. Because you know what I'm talking about, Tim. Every time someone gives internationally, it's like, well, what about your local world? She's a great example of how you can do both.
There
Why
we
not
are.
both?
There we are. Good on you, Dolly. Well, there we
All
go.
right, so that is what I have to say, and I think Timothy will take it from here.
Yes, so I have a couple of music news items. The first one is about AC/DC. So they've kicked off their 2024 Power Up European Tour. And as we've mentioned before on the podcast, we was asking the question, is it really AC/DC? So I've watched a few videos from the two concerts that they've
Okay.
already played. And I will say it sounds absolutely fantastic. Brian is in top vocal form. Angus sounds great. And in fact, they're even playing some deep cuts in their set list, which are some songs they haven't played in quite some time. Riff Raff. I mean, they haven't played that for decades. And,
Yeah.
it sounds good. But, when you see them up there, of course, Brian is much older and Angus is much older too. So, you would expect that.
Thank
But,
you for reminding me how old we are now, Tim. Love that for us.
Yeah, but the drummer Matt Long and the bassist Chris Chaney, I mean, neither of those have a relationship with AC/DC. As you know, Malcolm Young we lost a number of years ago, and his nephew Stevie Young is playing rhythm guitar. And I mean, I really thought it wasn't AC/DC as when Stevie Young was playing in the band, but with a drummer and a bass player who really have no relationship to AC/DC, it's almost like they're fronting a cover band.
So, as well as I've said, poor Tim, he's looking at my shirt right now. Joy was baking before this episode came, so she is now, in fact, covered with whatever she was baking with because she has zero recollection of where her body is in reference to the world. So, with that being said, that is not related to AC/DC, but I'm giving Tim some credit because he said all of that without making a comment. No, for me, Tim, the thing about AC/DC is that is I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to say it like your soul band. That sounds really weird. But when I think of the bands, I feel like Tim has these bands in his life, and he might be able to explain it better than I can. Better, like they define your developmental age. And AC/DC that's for me. That is who I am. That is the one that I think of. That's the first band that comes to mind. So I was on the fence because I wanted that true AC/DC soul, right, Tim? But I love it for what it is. I've listened to some of the YouTube videos. Tim has even talked a little bit about it and kind of been like, I've gone on the fence. But I went back and did my research. I think it's pretty good. I'm not mad at it.
No, it sounds amazing. The stage show looks great. I mean, they've got a lot of the modern things now with the screens, and of course, they have the cannons and the fireworks and all that sort of stuff. Smoke machines.
I would go see them live. It would pay a decent amount to go.
Well, I probably wouldn't because I saw a sort of the
This
classic.
is my heart and soul band, though, Tim. It's different for me.
Yeah, I saw them in the early 2000s when they had sort of more of a classic lineup. I saw them at Wembley Arena, which was that's a large
Sorry,
arena.
I was a child and couldn't go do all that.
but I don't know whether I would at this point pay to see them purely because it'd be a huge stadium. And
yeah, I'd have to know what the money is.
exactly. But anyway, I mean, everyone in the audience seemed to really enjoy it. I mean, they're being very clear about who the lineup is. But for me, the soul of AC/DC is not there.
I'm on the fence because it's kind of like where we've talked about. I feel like if I don't go, I'm going to have FOMO. I'm going to miss out. I'm be like, why didn't I go see them, Tim? But I also understand what you're saying. Does that make sense? Kind of what we talked about with like Paul McCartney and things of that nature. Like you want to go because you know in your heart. But for me, AC/DC is that band that I look back and kind of defined a generation for me. So I'd have to go. I just have to.
Well, maybe if they come close to here, you will get an opportunity to see them.
Yeah, I'll be lucky if they do, Tim. Tim, as well as I do know that we'll be lucky if they come around.
There we are. All right. Well, I have one other music news items before we get into the topic, and it is my topic this week. Now, have you heard this story this week? about the foreclosure sale on Graceland?
No.
Okay, so a company called the Nusani Investments and Private Lending Company.
Sounds rich.
Yeah, they claim in 2018, Lisa Marie Presley took out a $3 million loan or $3.8 million loan with security against Graceland. And they claim she didn't pay it back and they were trying to recover their debt. Now, the person who currently owns Graceland is a relative of the Presley family. It's Riley Keough, and I think she's the granddaughter or great granddaughter or something. Anyhow,
something similar.
Yeah, she is the legal owner of Graceland. So she got a court injunction to block the sale because they were going to have a sale, sell Graceland to the highest bidder, and then claim ownership of this property. But what they're saying is this investment and private lending company is just a sham company. It's a shell corporation. And the only reason it's been set up is to try and defraud Elvis Presley Enterprises and sell the iconic Graceland.
That would be super obvious to prove, though. Like, have they done anything else? Like, I need details, Tim.
Yeah, well, they have paperwork which supposedly was signed by Lisa Marie Presley, but the person who witnessed it said that they never ever notarized it, even though it has their name on it. And it also makes reference to some legal terms that didn't actually come into effect until after we lost Lisa Marie Presley. And the dates are weird. So, I mean, it's been shut down.
It's on the... Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, the whole thing has been shut down and the sale has been suspended by a judge. I don't know where this is going to end up, but certainly for now, the Graceland is in the hands of the Presley family, and Elvis Presley Enterprises continue to have Graceland and do tours and all that kind of stuff.
As a female who's currently studying to take her LSATs in July, everybody, Joy will be going to find out if she's a lawyer in July. But I feel like that should be pretty obvious. Like that seems very obvious to prove is if it's a shell of a company or isn't, if there's literally nothing else they've done. Like it makes you wonder like what these people think, Tim. Like it can't anyway. Yeah. I'm just saying, like it feels like, did they do anything else? Have they ever done this for anybody else? Oh no, never? Well, I wasn't born yesterday. Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy, but it doesn't seem that hard to prove.
Yeah, it seems like a very odd situation. Like you say, you think it would be very easy to prove, but I mean, they got lawyered up, and then the Presley family got lawyered up, and we will see what happens. But
and they didn't hire Joy to be their lawyers, so
well, there we are. But I mean, I think what's going to happen is this is going to get thrown out because it's all bogus. But it's just how can you sell Graceland? I mean, it's so iconic.
Like what I don't get. Okay, so I've had this conversation with many people in my life, Tim, and I want to know what your theory is. So in today's age, everybody has a camera right in front of their face, right at all times. And so it feels like to me to commit a crime that's very obvious. This is a very specific thing. But I've ever wondered like people who do stuff, Tim, and you're like, they knew they were going to be recorded or they knew it'd be easy to get out of. Like, do you ever worry like this situation? I'm like, this seems very obvious to me that someone would pick up on it. But do you ever think about that, Tim, when you see people getting in trouble? You're like, you do know everybody has a cell phone, right? Have you ever thought about that?
Yeah, I've thought about that too, but sometimes in these legal cases,
it's weird.
Yeah, that like a photograph couldn't be admitted as evidence and all this.
Gosh, Tim. Anyway, so yeah, but that's what I think of when I think of this. Like, it feels like this would be a very easy case from a lawyer's perspective to solve, but you're probably right. It's probably more complicated than I'm thinking.
It is probably more. Anyhow, let's hope that gets settled. But anyhow, this week is my topic. Joy doesn't know what I'm going to pick, and I thought I would tackle this one. This is not something we've spoken about a lot, but I thought we would talk about iconic musical guests on Saturday Night Live.
I mean, this is something that's probably overdue. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really going to get much into this show, Saturday Night Live. Obviously, it's a very long-running television program that's on NBC. It's been running since the 70s. And it's very unique, as per the name, as you would imagine. is that the show is actually broadcast live. Now, certainly if you're on the East Coast, you'll get it live. I think the West Coast is a replay, but on the East Coast, it's completely live. And they were doing that live long before any of those other shows were. Because if you watch a Conan or a David Letterman or any of those late night hosts now, they do something that's called live to tape, where they record the thing live, but they record it in the afternoon, and then they broadcast it as it was recorded. And if they need to make edits or bleep things, they can do that. But Saturday Night Live goes on a little bit later, and they get some special dispensation because it is a live show. And sometimes things happen on there. And whereas US network TV tends to be very conservative in nature, they sort of get a little bit of a free pass with that.
Yeah, I feel like it. So in America, after 9 p.m., you get a little bit of a free pass. But Tim can tell you it's not as equal, I think, to what the UK has. I say UK, I understand England, the whole. You guys might not think of yourself as part of the UK, but I feel like Tim understands what I mean by that. So anyway, but I feel like in America, after 9 p.m., there's kind of this thing where it's kind of known as prime time. And that's actually a term. It's known as prime time. I say that sarcastically. And like it becomes a little bit more like you can say things, you can do PG-13 things, you can, but it's still not, I feel like, equivalent to what the UK has almost in every section.
Yeah, UK TV after 9 p.m. is effectively like HBO, whether it comes to
which is like 12 a.m. in American style. Yeah. And you're probably at a hotel.
Yeah, I mean, UK TV or UK in general isn't as prudish and conservative as the United States is, but certainly network TV is a sort of, you can get away with anything past 9 p.m. When you're past the watershed, it seems to be all the guards are off and you can do what you like to some degree.
So, moral of this whole conversation is SNL is kind of past that watershed, I think. Yeah. But there's still the American, oh my gosh, we might see a nipple. Everybody freak out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me start off with some of these musical guests. I went through several lists of iconic guests, and I watched a load of videos this afternoon to prepare for this. So let's start at the very top. Now, I couldn't have an episode about SNL musical performances if I didn't talk about the band Queen.
Of course. I knew that was what was the first one, Tim. I knew.
Yeah, so they were on SNL on September the 25th, 1982. And the interesting thing about this is Queen's frontman Freddie Mercury, he blew out his voice the night before because he was having a massive fight with his partner. His voice was hoarse. He could barely speak.
Early 80s.
Yeah, but he still managed to pull off Under Pressure. And they also did Crazy Little Thing Called Love.
Which is the hardest song ever. I don't care what anybody says, Tim. I will go down in history books and say Crazy Little Thing Called Love is the most, it seems so easy to the ear. But when you go to sing it, I don't know, Tim, you might be able to explain it, but it's like you have to sing like, it's not a half a second. It's not a quarter of a second. You just have to know exactly where to sing at in that song. And it does not, if you don't know, you don't know. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, because it's like a 50s throwback rockabilly type track, Elvis type track.
It's harder than, I don't know. So moral story is, that isn't crazy. For Joey, that is the hardest song to sing. Continue.
Yeah. So this was the one and only time that Queen performed live on US TV. They never performed at any other late night shows or anything like that. And of course, this was 1982. And 4 years later, they did the Magic Tour playing, at Wembley, which is a very iconic concert that everybody knows. And this is actually the last performance they ever made in the United States as a band with Freddie Mercury.
And if you go look at it, it was like, 82, 83, Tim, something like that. Joy has hit her port table so many times in the last 5 minutes. Tim's done with her. But anyway, so it was probably like 82, 83. If you've never watched it, it always says like rare footage when you find it on like YouTube or whatever. I don't know how much rare it actually is, but I watched it many times and I love it. If you say his voice was blown out, I mean, he still stole the stage. That just says to what Freddie Mercury is as a human.
Yeah, I mean, if you compare it technically to some of his greatest performances, but even still, he put on a great performance, even though he was shouting his head off at his partner the night before.
It sounds like I know what Tim's saying. It sounds like scream singing, but He's a showman. Like, to be fair, Freddie Mercury's one of those people that I'm half the percent there for his singing and half there for the way he still the stage, and he still did a good job. I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I could have pulled that off when my voice was normal. So,
Well,
Freddie Mercury,
yeah,
you get my
some,
pass.
yeah, when you have someone with the power and range and stagecraft of Freddie Mercury,
Fine.
they always bring a performance.
Do, but the thing about it is yes, and so wasn't there like a heated or so supposedly he had like a heated argument with his boyfriend the night before. So I feel like there was something that he said led up to this. Am I crazy?
Very possibly. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of what they were discussing, apart from that they had him and his partner at the time had a very fiery relationship, and it came to a head the night before the SNL performance.
Dang, could you imagine being that partner and being like, that's your like everybody knows you as the guy who Freddie Mercury yelled at the night before to him
Yeah,
and thrown out his voice.
there we are. All right. Well, let's move on to another artist, another SNL artist. Now,
Fair
this
enough.
is an interesting one. This took place in 1994. And this is Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Now, what's interesting about this is that Tom Petty enlisted the services of Dave Grohl to play drums in the Heartbreakers. So the original drummer was a guy called Stan Lynch, and he'd recently left the band. So Grohl was still, wasn't feeling good because he just lost Kurt Cobain. Nirvana had broken up.
So that's pretty early in Grohl's career.
Yeah, and Tom Petty needed a drummer, and I think, somebody knew somebody who's somebody. And Tom Petty said, yeah, well, Grohl's a great drummer. We need somebody. Maybe he'd like to do SNL. So they did You Don't Know How It Feels and the song Honeybee, both on Saturday Night Live. And yeah, Dave Grohl is behind the drum kit. And it's interesting to see. I watched the video today. Now, when you see Dave Grohl now in the Foo Fighters, obviously he's a much older gentleman. And he doesn't drum as much as he did back then because he's primarily a frontman and guitar player. But it's funny to see, like, Nirvana era Dave Grohl behind the drums with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And it also sort of speaks to the musicianship that Dave Grohl has, because, Nirvana's sort of balls to the wall, full on music. I mean, yeah, they did Unplugged, which is a lot more laid back. But the fact that he can turn like that and then play with an iconic artist like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and still do a fantastic performance.
As much as he drives me insane, which Tim knows he does. But I will say Tim is right. So, like, this is a great example of his versatility. And I think that's what made him so important with the Foo Fighters and everything that he's done with, like, concerts to honor other people. I don't know. I think Dave Grohl has this ability to morph himself into whatever the situation is. I've always called myself a jack of all trades, and I think he's a great example of that, Tim. And I mean, not with musicianry, of course, but like in the corporate world and things that I always feel like I do really well because I'm a jack of all trades. I feel like he's the musician version of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Whether it's guitar, whether it's drums, whether it's songwriting, singing, or what have you. I mean, Dave, at
He
this
can do it
point,
all.
yeah, he can do it all, and he's revered by a lot of people. A lot of people in the industry love him. He's very easy to get on with, and people just like being around Dave Grohl. Now, the interesting thing is that Tom Petty asked him to join the Heartbreakers, and he was thinking about it. But this was around the time he was making the demos for Foo Fighters, and he felt that as great as it would be to be a Heartbreaker, he felt that he had something else. He felt that he was ready to do something different.
Might overshadow, Tim. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes, but like it would overshadow what the Foo Fighters have done in some weird way.
Yeah, and I mean, history has shown that he made the right decision. He had those demos. He released albums under the Foo Fighters, and then now this absolutely huge act, and they have been for the last 20 odd years or thereabouts. And
I thought they're a jack of all trades, Tim.
Yeah, but had he just been the drummer in the Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, would he have been satisfied? Probably.
We will never know, Tim.
Yeah, I would say probably not.
I feel like he's one of those people who is like, I don't know how to say it, but he's almost like a Paul McCartney of sorts. Like they can just do everything. So probably not. Probably not. Let's be honest, Tim.
Absolutely. All right. Well, let's move on to another
What's
one.
next?
So this comes from April the 11th, 1992. And this is Pearl Jam.
I've heard of them.
Now they come under the genre of grunge, but I don't know. I think they're a little bit more than that. They I always find their
I always
songs.
think of them more alternative than grunge.
Yeah, whenever they talk about the big grunge bands of the 90s, they always talk about Pearl Jam. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you're right. I consider them more an alternative act than a grunge act.
I
But
agree with that.
yeah, but they played the song Alive and they played the
Okay.
song Porch. And also Eddie Vedder, because this is what you do. You go on SNL and he had a politically themed T-shirt because
Of course he did.
because you go on and you make a statement and all that kind of stuff. But the interesting thing is Mike McCready, the guitarist from Pearl Jam, he said,
Yeah.
this is his quote: "Me and a buddy went into one of the dressing rooms and got loaded in honor of John Belushi."
See, I love that more than Vedder making. So Eddie Vedder is one. Okay, I'm gonna say this, guys, and you guys can cover me this. I know there is a diehard set of people who adore Pearl Jam. I have not one of them, Tim. Just gonna say it for what it is. I love them. I think of them more as an alternative rock band than even a grunge band. I think they kind of breached. I feel like they started out grunge and they became more alternative Soundgarden type music to be. Does that make sense?
Sure.
But I'm not a huge fan. I'm more, maybe a little bit more than your average radio fan when it comes to Pearl Jam.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the truth of the matter. But for what it's worth, I do know Vedder has wonderful baritone vocals.
Mm-hmm.
I just wish he would enunciate a little better.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, there are some big Pearl Jam fans. And in fact, our friend Ian Husband is a massive Pearl Jam fan and he's seen them perform many times. But for me, I've listened to a lot of Pearl Jam's music and I think they reached a peak with 10. The album
Yeah.
10 is probably the ultimate statement that you want to listen to for Pearl Jam. And it,
I agree with
even, I
that.
mean, like Versus is okay, and there's a few other albums that were okay, but like 10 is like killer, 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 killer.
And
Every
that's
track-
early 90s for people who don't realize what Tim is saying.
yeah, and I feel that very first album, 10, they reached a peak with that, and for me, they never ever exceeded that.
And that doesn't insult them. It's just where I think Tim's probably right. That's the emphasis when I think of Pearl Jam. I mean, I'm going to be honest. The first thing that comes to mind when I think of Pearl Jam is probably Jeremy, which isn't a great thing to come to mind every time, but that is Tim. That's the first thing I think of.
Yeah, Jeremy and Alive.
Yeah,
And Black is another great
Black's
song.
a
of theirs.
great one too.
And again, what are all those songs from? They're from the album
Then
10.
10. Oh, wow. I didn't know Tim was going to say that, everybody. But to be fair, and if you're a huge fan by them, it's probably just me missing something. Better Man, I mean, everybody's heard Better Man a lot. Last Kiss is probably a big one, and that's a remake. Who did the original Last Kiss, Tim? What is his name?
I'm
I
not
know
sure.
that guy's name. Tim knows what I'm talking about, though. That's a thing. It is a thing, guys. You guys can Google it and yell at us later. But anyway.
There we are.
But to be fair, it does not surprise me that they had a controversial moment in SNL world.
Well, of course. I mean, that's what you do. When you're a rock band, you go on SNL, it's live, and then you make a controversial statement. And we've got a few other of those else that we come
course.
through the list.
All right, what's next?
All right. So this would be Tina Turner. She appeared on it.
Tina.
Yep. She appeared on SNL on February the 2nd, 1985. And she was introduced by the host Alex Karras, which is not someone that I'm familiar with. But she was introduced as the first lady of American popular music.
Is that a term? Do people introduce you as that?
I don't know, but it fits.
I've never heard it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's Tina Turner, for goodness sake. Why wouldn't she be the first lady of American popular music?
I mean, you're not wrong, but I've literally never heard that statement. I mean, isn't she generally referred to as like the queen of rock and roll? Because she's got that soul, man.
Yeah.
Tina's got that sound.
I think you can talk about Tina in many different ways, any of those superlatives, and all of them fit for her. So on SNL, she performed What's Love Got to Do with It? She also did Private Dancer, and then she also did Better Be Good to Me. And then she also even appeared on a skit with Martin Short as well. I mean, so she was up for some fun while she was on SNL.
I mean, you might as well go full if you're going to have to be there all night, really, right? This is live.
Yeah, I mean, I've only ever seen SNL twice. I mean, I've seen clips of it through the years, and I said I saw most of these acts that we're talking about now today when I was going through the clips. But actually watching SNL from beginning to end, I've only ever seen it twice. And also, I've only ever been to see the 30 Rock studios of SNL
I've
twice.
only been once.
Yeah, you go on the tour of 30 Rockefeller Center and they take you to the SNL stage and all that stuff. I've done that. I've done that tour twice and I've seen it twice. The problem is if I watch another episode of SNL in its entirety, I'll have to go and do the 30 Rock tour again.
I mean, that's unfair. But to be fair, I mean, Tina is one of those people, I think she has a personality. So I can't imagine them not wanting her to be a part of like the actual skits. Does that make sense, Tim? Like she would do such a good job. Also, I have done that once. It's only been once though that I've actually done like the kind of background tour. But when we were there last time, I went not this past, but the time before, however you quantify that in time. Tim knows this. We're in New York. We went behind stage. You know what the weirdest thing for me, Tim, when I was behind stage and I was in SNL, I was in the Rockettes, I was behind all these stages, the carpets. I've said this many times, but for some reason, when I was walking behind all these stage fronts, I thought they had really good carpets, but they're literally the world's worst carpets. They look like you're at a cheap movie theater. Yeah. And they have like weird, like, I don't know why that surprises me, Tim. But when I did the SNL tour, when I went behind like Rockefeller, all of that, it's weird. It's terrible carpets. Why is that, Tim? Who's buying the carpets?
Well, it's industrial carpet. There are several
terrible.
There are several grades of carpet. There's like the carpet that you have in your house, if you do have carpets in your house. Yeah. And then there's the kind that you use in an industrial setting. And it's the same kind of carpets that they have in casinos and things like that. It's incredibly hard wearing. And it's also very easy to clean in case of spillages and all that kind of stuff. And it's a different grade of carpet. So when you look at it, probably from a distance, it doesn't look too bad. But if you get up close of it, it looks rough. And the reason is because it is designed to be a hard-wearing industrial carpet.
Well, I didn't know Tim worked for the carpet people in SNL, but now I know, guys. But they're really bad. It's what Tim is telling you. I don't know why it is, Tim, but that's surprising to me. For some reason, I just always thought the carpets would be better. I just did.
There we are. I mean, there's TV magic going on. There's iconic performances, but sadly, the carpets are not up to snuff.
Nobody called me before they installed them. They're literally, for those who do not understand what I'm saying, and Tim knows, when you go into like say a movie theater, you have that weird carpet that like no one cares about with planets. That's the same carpet that's behind SNL. It's the same carpet that's behind the Rockettes. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
The other thing is the pattern on those kind of industrial carpets.
That's a good point.
Is designed in a way so you can make miles and miles of this carpet. And then it doesn't look weird because they'll have some design on it, but it'll be repeated in a way where it's very easy to slot new pieces of the carpet in and then the pattern continues.
Look at you, Tim, thinking about all the things I didn't think about. I just complained about the carpets. All right, what's your next song?
Okay, so this went on SNL on April the 13th, 1996. And this is Rage Against the Machine, which is a band that we've spoken about a few times here on the podcast. So they went and performed their song Bulls on Parade, which apparently is one of the heaviest songs ever performed in SNL.
Really?
Yeah, apparently so. I mean, Rage Against the Machine performed some very heavy music. It's almost like rap music, but with a guitar being the DJ. It's very interesting. I mean, I don't care for rap, but I find the music of Rage Against the Machine very interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah. So a battle broke out with the SNL stagehands and the Rage Against the Machine road crew because they were hanging an American flag at the back of the stage upside down. Which, as you know, it's a signal of distress, isn't it? If you hang an American flag upside down.
It's supposed to mean someone to come down and help you or whatever.
Yeah. And they're very political. They're in behind a lot of causes. And, they probably felt whatever politics was going on at the time, it was a distressing time. And they were trying to make a statement with that. So they finished their song. And as soon as they got off stage, the show's producer went to the tour manager and said there'll be no second song. and then they weren't allowed to wave goodbye at the end, and there's no hugging the host. They were told, get out of the building right now.
I mean, I can't expect anything less from people who wrote the song about being in a box, Tim. Like, I don't know. Like, that's just Rage Against the Machine to be. Like, they are a little bit punk. I don't find it to be the most hardcore band. You know what I mean, Tim? Like, I find that a little bit for SNL, I guess, though it makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, Rage Against the Machine are a political band in nature. Tom Morello has always been very political in nature.
Their literal name, Tim, is Rage Against the Machine. I just want to put that out for everybody.
And the interesting thing about Tom Morello, the guitarist, who's really he's not really the front man of the band, but, if there's ever any discussion about Rage Against the Machine, he's the man. He does actually have a degree from Harvard in political science. So, he has very strong opinions, but he also has the education to back up the things that he's talking about.
I mean, that's kind of how I feel with them as a whole. I also feel like their music is wonderful. And if you're not listening to Bulls Parade, Guerrilla Radio, Testify, like any of those songs, Tim, you're missing out. And then I don't find them to be grunge. I do find them to be a little bit more like,
as I said to you, I feel it's more rap rock. But the interesting thing is Tom Morello is being the DJ, so he's making a lot of those DJ sounds with his guitar. Very interesting. They're a very interesting band, and Tom Morello is a very important and unique guitar player.
And like the thing about it is like for me, like I think Tim's right. I feel like it's a weird version between the grunge rock bands that and maybe like the Beastie Boys. Mm-hmm. For lack of a better way of saying it, but I love me some Rage Against the Machine. So, like, I say, do you, boo. That's all I got to say about that. I do, though. Like, they're one of those bands that I absolutely adore. I don't know. Yeah. And Tim's right, though. Like, if your name is Rage Against the Machine, like, you kind of have to be.
Yeah, you have to live up to that name.
Like, you can't just not. I don't know how to explain it, Tim. You can't just not be Rage Against the Machine if your name is Rage Against the Machine. If you literally hire a band, Tim, and their name is Rage Against the Machine, wouldn't you expect them to be like up here at all times?
Sure, they're a very intense band, which they always have a lot of messages that they want to talk about. So yes, you need to fall into line with that band name.
All I can say is killing in the name of. All right, Tim, go ahead.
All right.
Somebody will get that reference out there in the stratosphere.
There we go. All right. Well, let's go with this one. This is from October the 18th, 1975. So this was actually the second episode of Saturday Night Live. Saturday Night Live premiered in 1975. And this is very unique because it was Simon and Garfunkel. Now, Simon and Garfunkel had split up in 1970, and this was the first time they had performed together since that breakup in 1970. So in 1975, they reunited briefly, and they appeared on Saturday Night Live. They did a performance of The Boxer and Scarborough Fair, and they had a new single out at the time, which was called My Little Town. And it was it's just interesting to see because, Art Garfunkel and Paul Simon have had a sort of on and off relationship throughout the years. When Paul Simon decided or found out that he could actually sing the songs he was writing, he felt he didn't need Art Garfunkel anymore. So it was interesting to see this performance with the two of them.
My favorite thing about these two, and someone out there is going to yell at me for this because it has nothing to do with their music. It has nothing to do with anything. Have you guys ever seen the foreheads of Simon and Garfunkel? Because Simon, one of them has those weird little bangs, and the other one has a really big hairline. I don't know. Have you ever Googled the picture of Simon and Garfunkel, Tim?
Yeah.
Do you know what they physically look like?
Yeah, I watched this performance this afternoon, and you are spot on. There is some interesting hair decisions going on with them, but as you say, their foreheads are very large. Maybe Paul Simon's forehead has to be big to keep that big musical brain in there. I don't know.
Maybe. But you've never seen them. I just want everybody who listens to give them a Google right now. Look up Simon and Garfunkel on Saturday Night Live.
Mhm.
Also, the mustache on this one is funny if you've never seen it, but the hairline, and they still have the same hairlines. And to be fair, Joy has a horrible five head too. She's speaking from experience. But it's just very funny to me because they don't look like the people who you would think are singing these songs, Tim. They don't.
No, and also it comes from an era of music where musicianship and songcraft were the most important things, and being attractive.
Not about looks.
Yeah, not being. I mean, now a lot of Simon and Garfunkel at the time were probably considered a pop act, and now pop acts you have to have certain beauty standards. You have to.
I
look.
don't even think the Beatles would pass by that anymore.
No, absolutely not. I mean, you see a lot of these pop acts now. It's because they're attractive people.
And it's hard because I wonder, it does make me struggle. Okay, Tim, I'm going to tell you something. And this is like heart to heart here. Because these people who are really attractive, who become these pop artists now, sometimes I think they're actually musically talented. But I think the whole world is attracted by the fact that they look attractive.
Sure.
And it's hard because I'm like, I want them to become successful because they're good musicians. But then you have the people who aren't good looking, who are wonderful musicians who get overlooked, right? And so it's like a catch-22, but it's like, who wins here? Because there are plenty of musicians nowadays who I think are great musicians, but like I feel like their looks are I don't know, Tim. It's just weird how the world works.
Well, I think now entertainment is seen as a full package. So back in the days of Simon and Garfunkel, they would release a record and you might see them on an SNL episode, especially because video recorders were not even so much of a thing back then. And so you might catch them. And you might have seen a poster of them, possibly, or see a picture of them in a magazine. But your primary interaction with Simon and Garfunkel is going to be buying a record and listening to it. But now, of course, you have a pop singer or performer or something like that. They need to look good in their video, which is on YouTube. They're going to be on TV, and they're going to be on here, and they're going to be there, and they're going to be on the internet. And it's their likeness is everywhere. So it has to be a full package.
I mean, yeah, and I get being a triple threat. Like, I get it. But it is hard. I think Ted makes a good point. If you comparison to, like, I mean, even when we talk about Hall & Oates, like, we make jokes about the way they look versus the way modern-day pop stars look. You know what I mean, Tim? Mm-hmm. Same thing. All right, what's the next song or next band, I guess I should ask.
Okay, so this is a very notorious performance. This is from 2004. And this is Ashlee Simpson.
Of course, I knew it was coming down the line.
Yeah. So it said a very notorious performance. She was caught lip syncing on her first, and I would say only, performance as a guest on there. Apparently she lost her voice the morning of the show, and they'd done a rehearsal with this backing track. Apparently the band and her weren't super into this, but they went and did it anyway. But things started going out of sync, and it all just went horribly wrong. And then she stopped attempting to lip sync. But the worst part is when they came back from the commercial, she said that my band played the wrong song.
And she did a weird little jingle dance while she said it. I know exactly what Tim's talking about.
Yeah,
she threw her band out to whatever. Tim, she threw them out to shore, sea, whatever.
She threw them under the bus, is what she did.
That's the bus. The bus ran them over and then ran them back over on live TV because of her, basically.
Yeah, I mean, whatever became of Ashlee Simpson? I mean, when you say the name Ashlee Simpson, even now, 20 years later,
everybody knows that story.
That is the first thing you think of. I mean, you was very much younger then, but even still, that's the first thing you think of when you think of Ashlee Simpson.
The sad part is, Tim, and I know you would not know this because no offense, Tim, but I just don't feel like you were. Jessica, her older sister, Jessica Simpson, who was married to Nick Lachey, and they had that TV show from 98 Degrees. Everybody knows Jessica. Jessica put out multiple albums. She was a decent singer. And if you ever see her and Nick Lachey did this weird comedy show together where they performed live, Jessica had an amazing voice. But the whole thing with her sister and then the stupid reality show she went on, do you know what I mean? Tim overshadowed the whole thing, so nobody even knows that. Everybody thinks when they think Jessica Simpson, they think pop act, right? That's all you think. You think she did that version of that song that was basically a copycat of Jack and Diane.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's what everybody thinks of because that was her. That was her. You don't know about Tim, that pop song in the early 2000s, basically copycat with Jack and Diane.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. That was Jessica Simpson. The sad part is Jessica can sing. If you go back and look, it's kind of like what I've shown you with like Britney and I've shown you with Miley. She could sing, but she got so caught up. And then you put her name. What do you think of? You think of her being married to that guy from the 98 Degrees band, Nick Lachey. They did that. And then her sister got in trouble for lip syncing. That's what you think of.
Yeah. And certainly, as I said, when you talk about Ashlee Simpson, this is the one and only thing you know about her.
That's what I'm saying, though. Like, for Jessica, she just got and then she was dating Pete Wentz from, the pop punk guy. That's all I know about them. And the worst part, though, Tim is right, is she does this weird, if you've never seen it, go Google it, guys. She does a weird little jig, which you guys, I don't know why I did the jig because you can't see me. This is an audio. Tim saw me do the jig.
I saw it.
Tim saw it. And then she blames her band.
Yeah, that's the worst part.
Why?
Messing
Just why?
messing up the lip sync is one thing. Throwing your band under the bus is a completely different kettle of fish.
Tim, I would have just lied. I just said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know we were going to perform that song. I thought we were going to do something different." I would have just lied. I would have never in a million years, in my heart of hearts, never thought it was okay to throw my people that are doing everything for me under the bus. Because the matter is, people don't get it. It's not just one person, and Tim knows what I'm saying. It takes everyone to make that show go. It takes everyone to make it work. Even the person who just says, "Go to the bathroom now, come on stage," like they're there for a reason.
100%. All right. Well, let's move on to another one.
Sorry, guys, I got on my high horse, but it frustrates me. And Tim feels the same way I do. It's just frustrating.
There we are, and we all thank everyone for coming to Joy's TED Talk.
All right. What's next?
Okay. So this one is from 1975, and this is Billy Preston. And this is pretty interesting. So Billy Preston will always go down in history as being SNL's very first musical guest. He was the first person ever to play on SNL on the very first SNL episode. Now, he's famous because he's played on a Beatles album and he's played on a Rolling Stones album, and he was sort of almost a member of the Beatles for a while.
He's a keyboard player, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But he's famous for that Nothing from Nothing song, and that is the song he played on the very first SNL episode. And that happened in 1975.
Which is a great song, by the way.
Yeah, it is good. It's one of those songs that when we had Sirius satellite radio, we used to like 70s on 7, and they played it about once an hour on average.
Oh, no, he's making money. Tim, the episode I did last week about how much money someone's made off of one song, it should have been on there because I'm sure he's been nothing but nothing. I mean, he's been on everything, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He is or should I say, was a fantastic musician who, as I said, famous for playing with the Beatles and also famous for playing with the Rolling Stones.
And you've heard him being called as like the fifth Beatle or something like that, like something along those lines. I don't know that I believe that, but I have heard that before. I've heard that statement.
Towards the end of the Beatles, I think he was potentially officially a member of the band for a very short while, but I mean that sort of stuff sort of gets lost to history a little bit. But yeah, he was there towards the end of the band,
and he passed away in the early 2000s, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Mr. Preston, I like your song. I mean, he has but he's one of those people that backed a lot of people too, right? Like I remember I've heard that he was a backup for like other people in Motown, like Sam Cooke, things of that nature. Like I think he's known for that as well. So he probably was. I mean, he knew a lot of people in the business. Is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, he was famous for doing that kind of stuff. I mean, he said he was a fabulous musician, songwriter, keyboard player, etc., etc. But said nothing from nothing is a really good song.
It really is a good song, though. Like Tim said, it's been used in everything since the beginning of time. But it's kind of cool that he was the fifth Beatle, quote unquote. It's kind of cool that he was the first person to go on SNL. I don't think I knew that till you just told me, Tim.
Yeah, I didn't know that until I was doing research for this episode and I pulled up the clip of him doing it. But but there we are. Very interesting.
Now I have nothing but nothing stuck in my head. All right, continue.
All right. So you couldn't have an SNL episode without discussing this. So this happened in 1992, and this is Sinead O'Connor. Sinead O'Connor is someone that we lost very recently, sadly. And she went on SNL and she performed an a cappella version of Bob Marley's song War. She changed the line in it from fighting racial injustice to fight sexual abuse. And then she had a picture of John Paul II, and then she tore that picture up. She was making a statement about abuse and alleged abuse in the Catholic Church, and that was the way that she wanted to make that protest and statement. But as we know, the United States is a very conservative country and also a very religious country, and as you would imagine, the entire country lost their mind.
Yes. So basically, from what I understand, it was John Paul II was the Pope at that time. I'm not Catholic, everybody. Don't come for me. That's just what I've heard. And basically, she was like, fight the enemy or something like that. And then she rips it up and it becomes a thing. And if you watch it, if you go, it was early 90s, go SNL, Sinead O'Connor. She'll come right up on YouTube. But it's funny because Tim makes a good point, because depending on which one you watch, some of it has been washed. Does that make sense? Like sometimes you hear her say fight the real enemy, sometimes you don't. Sometimes it focuses on her. It's just very interesting how much American culture has affected the way that has come out, which is so interesting because isn't Sinead O'Connor? She's Irish.
That's
correct. Which is a very heavy Catholic area. She's not even American.
No, but I mean, she was somebody who was, again, making a process with her music. Yeah. She was using the platform that she had to talk about things that were very important to her.
Well, no, what I'm getting at, though, is I find it very interesting because it's probably even more serious to her because she is Catholic. And this is, not Catholic, she's Irish, which is a very heavily Catholicized. Tim will say whatever I'm trying to say. Catholicism? I don't know. They have a lot of Catholics in Ireland, everybody. That's what I'm saying. Tim's like, what Joy said. That's fine. It worked.
It's fine, Joy. You're being you, and I never want to correct you because you're just being you.
What, Catholicism? Is that the word?
Yeah, that word.
Whatever.
Catholicism.
Fine. I don't think that's right, Tim, because that's everybody who's ever... Don't come first there. Me or Tim are not religious. What's the next thing? Let's just move along. Move along for Sinead O'Connor.
All right. Well, we've probably got time for a couple more. So let's do this one. So this is the Rolling Stones from 1978. They performed Beast of Burden, Shattered, and Respectable. They had sort of blockbuster success at the time. I mean, the Rolling Stones have always been, a huge act, but they were sort of riding high with their late 70s output. And they were also the hosts as well as the musical guest. Sometimes you get that on SNL, like the host will also be the musical guest. But they played 3 tracks in a row in one 13-minute segment, which I don't think is something that's done anymore. When I was looking at some of the other acts that didn't make this list, there was a punk band from the 70s who actually played like 4 songs in a row, which is in my limited experience of watching SNL suggests that that's not really done anymore.
1 to 2 songs at most, basically.
Yeah. But what's most memorable about this was they had quote unquote raunchy stage antics. Apparently, Mick Jagger ripped off Ronnie Wood's shirt during Shattered.
Of course he did. Yeah,
and then when they were performing Respectable, Mick Jagger decided that he would lick Ronnie Wood's face.
Well, you know what the funny part about that is? If you see the stuff that goes on nowadays, Tim, that seems so elementary. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's so small with the grand scheme of things now.
Well, sure. I mean, you think back to the 50s when like Elvis was on Ed Sullivan and he was just shaking his hips and like the entire moral compass of the country like imploded on itself.
I know. And we're talking about late 70s for this, early 80s. I don't know. What was this? When did they perform? Late 70s?
1978.
Okay, then I'm right. I mean, it's kind of like that middle ground, I guess. Do you know what I mean, Tim? You've still got that people who are like freaking out because of the 50s, but you still have people who love disco and things of that nature. It shouldn't be that shocking to them. But I mean, Mick Jagger should have done what he did, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
I love it. That's all I'm going to say. That's all I'm going to say.
there we are. All right. Well, let's close this episode out with one more. And we're going to close out with a performance that happened on February the 21st, 1981. And that would be Prince.
Of course.
So Prince was only 22 when he first performed on Saturday Night Live. And he performed a song called Party Up. And I watched the video today. He's bouncing around, he's spinning, he's sliding. He plays an absolutely fantastic guitar solo. And
Of course
then
he does.
And then once he does that, he just like slams his microphone stand down and walks off the stage. Apparently, the producers of the show said, wow, they hadn't seen anything like that, and it was so original. And, they really saw what Prince was going to bring to the table for the rest of his career on that. The problem is with this performance, a cast member cursed live on air in 1981.
No.
So it went out. And of course, everyone saw the performance, also heard what went on with that cast member. So this episode was never really replayed.
And that's sad because I'm sure Prince was in its element and it got overshadowed by some random guy who said some word that probably wasn't even a big deal, but because American conservatives got a hold of it, it was some huge deal.
Yeah, he swore on TV and then it became a thing.
Oh my God, stop the princess, everyone. He said a bad word live on air. I don't know. Tim knows that I'm kind of like, if you're watching SNL, you get what you get. Like Saturday Night Live.
But I mean, that's your 2024 brain. I mean, you have to think about 1981.
Yeah. You're right. Early 80s. I guess, Tim. But I'm glad we came far and we understand that some things shouldn't overshadow other things and a cuss word doesn't make or break the world.
Absolutely. But anyhow, that was the first performance he made there in 1981. I watched that today on YouTube and it was absolutely fantastic. I said, you can really see the phenomenon that was Prince and where it began.
How old did you say he was?
He was only 22.
I mean, the thing about it is, if you go back and watch Prince when he was younger, it's like he was born, Tim, to just do this. Because I've watched stuff when they say, oh, Prince was like 19. And I'm like, 19? When I was 19, I barely knew, you know what I mean, Tim, how to cook some eggs. And Prince just like knows how to I don't know, he was one of those people that I feel like is naturally born to be this person.
Sure. And apparently he was also very sneaky and funny because there was some charity event. I was listening to a podcast the other day and I forget who it was. And someone was saying that they were at some charity concert type thing and Prince was involved with it. And Prince was milling around backstage and nobody really knew whether Prince was going to perform or Prince wasn't going to perform. It hadn't been confirmed, but he was in the backstage area. And I think a comedian was just gone to the stage. And I think he had a relationship with Prince. He's like, oh, Prince, how are you doing? So you're here? Yeah, I'm here. So you performing today? He said, no, I'm not. I'm not performing today. I'm just here. I'm going to sign some items and I'll be out. And they went, oh, okay. And so the guy does his stand-up set. He leaves the stage. Then Prince comes on and plays music.
He's like, dude, you just told me you were getting ready to leave. I mean, I love that. But I mean, I don't know. I would probably mess with people too if I was a celebrity, but that might just be the maniacal person in me. Tim knows. I would have to do it. I couldn't stop myself. So me and Prince might be similar in that sense.
There we go. Well, fantastic. Well, there we are. That was a rundown of Saturday Night Live musical guests through the ages and ones that were important. And before we go, do you have anything for the people, Joy?
Just be extra, extra kind. The world is hard right now, everybody.
Absolutely. I would say that. Just be super kind to everybody that you meet. See you later.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.